Cool.
All right. Shall we get going? I think a very nice turn up of everybody. So thanks a lot for joining. I'll share my screen for the very beginning, and maybe Marissa or Anna, if you can share the Myro link in the chat, because I think as of the check-in we'll meet everybody on the board. Okay. So everybody's looking at I hope at my Myro board. Yes, is that the fact? Yes, all right. Okay, so welcome everybody. So today it's a bit, a hands-on session, focused more on a canvas, let's say. We also brought a topic forward, which we'll touch upon in a second. But today it's more about leveraging a systemic innovation tool, a framework that would help you throughout transition, going from current patterns to new aspirations, and then seeing how we can map, how we can understand better what the effect is, or how the current patterns behave today, how they look today, how they can maybe be mitigated. Then on the other side, how new aspirations, new futures will come in and how they can be built. And then as a third vector, how disruptive innovations today can either solidify the current or can help move us towards the future. So you heard me talking about three things, and we'll talk about the three horizon canvas. I think it's quite well known. But before we go there, just a quick welcome, sharing who we are. So the System Innovation Singapore Hub. So we're part of the System Innovation network. And as you can see, if you go to the Myro board later on, there is a link to the network, also to the network's tools and frameworks where this one is coming from. And today I'm here together with Marissa and Anna, who are a bit the founders of the System Innovation Singapore Hub. Myself, I'm Wesley, working for 14, 15 years in innovation, but also quite interested in systemic coaching. So also living systems, working with people as systems, but today it's more about systems and in a system innovation context. Okay, so maybe everybody can come on the Myro board, and then I'll bring everybody to me, if that is feasible. Okay, I'll give you a second. Just a quick check-in, because I just jumped in there, and how many people do we have now? 18 people. Is everybody a bit okay with the Myro board? I can quickly maybe show. So if you go to Myro, on the left side, you have this quick toolbar, and the one with the flipped side, you have the Postits. You can choose a color. You can put it somewhere. You can type something in. You can copy paste, like Command C, Command V. You can copy paste Post-its, and then you can put content in it. So that's I think that the key things we need to do today. Not so much summarizing and grouping. So just being able to put Post-its. Is that all okay for me? If not, just give a shout out. Okay, and maybe. For today, a quick check-in, a bit, a funny one, informal one, is if you think about the context of system mapping and system mapping frameworks, where do you stand yourself? So today we're going to look at one canvas, but what's your relationship to system innovation tools in general? It's maybe a very open question, but maybe you feel yourself, very much in control. You like it. Maybe that's number 19, or you feel it's a bit a risky thing and you don't know how to do it. So that's maybe a 20. So my question is, just take a Post-it and yeah, put it on this check-in screen. Is that clear for everybody? So I'll give an example. So maybe today I'm a bit number 2. That's how I feel, helping everybody out with the Myro board. Well, so if you can put your name and you put yourself on the check-in board, that would be good. Then we can have a sense for everybody. So I can put some Post-its on the side if you want, and you can drag them. Okay, I see Mark studying a bit, I guess. Yeah, that's my interpretation, of course. Anna is in a bit in a supportive mood. Natalie is checking things out. Marissa and Novi are a bit on the loose court, a bit a balancing act. Amy is also checking things out. Okay. Katarina is climbing, I think, upwards, number 16. So I think, yeah, generally we're all a bit in exploration mode, and I think for us as well, the more we learn them, the more we get to see upsides of them, and the more we understand how they bring value. And I think today's as well an occasion for that is let's learn about the canvas itself, and then look at the content itself, looking at the flow, and then see how in the future potentially it can help you in very much different topics or contexts as today. Okay, let's go to the topic of today. So it's a bit in line with Glasgow that just finalized. It's about a lot of the carbon footprint. And I'll pass the word for a second to Marissa, if that's fine for you, Marissa, to talk a bit about 4 definitions. If you look at carbon neutrality, until negative emissions.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Wesley. I think just for us, for the purposes of today, to give us something to think about, we really wanted just to get some clarifications. It's not that we're focusing on one particular definition, but we wanted just to highlight some of the differences so that we have, I guess, a more interesting conversation. So the first thing is, like, what do we mean by decarbonisation? And in this particular context, what we mean is the kind of decarbonisation is the reduction of carbon dioxide emissions through the use of probably low carbon power sources, and also achieving which leads to achieving a lower output of greenhouse gas emissions into the atmosphere. So that's what we kind of mean as a broad term in today's session for decarbonisation. And it doesn't matter if we don't stick to it, it's just so that we have a starting point together. And then here on the board, you'll see that there are various terms that people use to talk about that. And that actually influences the strategies that they use in order to do that. So on the far left, where we see the term carbon neutral, what we're saying is it's kind of removing carbon from the environment. And that's kind of translates into this policy of not increasing carbon emissions. But how is that done? That's often done by offsets. So it's not reducing, it's just still generating the carbon or the emissions and then finding ways to sort of cancel out the carbon that has been emitted in the first place. And then obviously as we move towards the right-hand side of this chart that has the four kind of terms on there, we have net zero CO2 emissions, and that's kind of removal of the emissions, the carbon emissions that humans have generated over a specific period. And so that kind of translates into eliminating the actual original sources of it and removing it through kind of any kind of neutralizing or permanent storage of it. And that might mean kind of direct investment into emissions or emission reduction projects. And then further on to the left, on the third column, we have net zero emissions. So that would, or net zero greenhouse gas. And so that would be removal of greenhouse gases and the ones that have been emitted by humans. And that would obviously kind of translate into the same as kind of removing and kind of neutralizing them, but it includes all of the greenhouse gases rather than simply carbon dioxide. And then as we move further over into the right, talking about carbon negative or net negative emissions, what we're really talking about is removing carbon or the emissions more than they actually create. So in fact, you're kind of taking out more. You may be generating, but you're also kind of taking out what you've emitted plus more. And that can fall into a couple of sort of strategies. And one of those would be kind of nature-based solutions. It might be kind of, I guess, trees and other things that can help sequester carbon, and things like kind of measures that aim to enhance the natural processes. So anything that builds within the ecosystem or the kind of, I guess, systems within our earth that can help us do that. And then the third part might be kind of technology-based solutions that might be capturing carbon and then storing it or reusing it for other things as well, or the emissions. So, I mean, it's not that we want to be too specific in saying you can't apply those techniques to anything we're talking about today, but just so that we can also differentiate and maybe expand upon the conversations that we're having. Thanks, Wesley.
Okay, thanks a lot. And then maybe just to make it, to give one example, one report from McKinsey talks about Poland in specifically. I'm not a climate expert or carbon reduction expert, so I'm going to keep it very short also because I want to go to the canvas itself. But this is just also, I think, an example of what Marissa was talking about, that Poland, because it's one of the countries in Europe that has one of the highest levels of CO2 emissions and wants to cut that down to zero by 2050. And as you can see, main decarbonization levers are on across different industries. The biggest impact is in the power and the heat industry, where they want to go to renewable energy and this I think carbon capture and storage, usage and storage. Then industry also plays a big role. What are then the key levers there is to go to heat electrification, more energy efficiency, and again, the CCUS. Transport, of course, is also a big one because a lot of transport happens back and forth to Poland. So replacing then these combustion engines and going to electric vehicles. And then other industries or sectors that play a big role is building, related to insulation, related to heating, agriculture as well, land management, fertilization. So these are a couple of examples of decarbonization and what to happen in a country. And you'll see that, as other countries, we'll see an increase in demand for a higher energy production. So we need to shift, and shifting, for example, to solar, to wind, to other sources than traditional fuels. And that, of course, brings, as a last thing, a whole new industry to play. There's a lot of investment needed. So I think a surplus of 380 billion. So that's 1% or 2% of GDP per annum that needs to be invested. But that also brings saving with it, because if you cut down on traditional ways of creating energy, that has 75 billion of savings. Also, energy security comes in, and you bring in a lot of new industries, new jobs, and a boost in GDP on the other hand. So that offsets a bit the investment. So that's a bit from a country level perspective. All right, so that's a bit setting the scene. Now, before we jump into the canvas, I just want to take you through what we're actually going to do here. And we're going to use the Three Horizon canvas. So I'm going to very quickly guide us through. So this is the template you're going to see in a second in a larger extent. As you can see, this is about mapping from left to right, going from the current patterns to the aspired future. And there are some things playing with that, different horizons. I'll come to that in a second. So we go from present to transition to future. So this is all about looking at patterns from on the y-axis, and the higher the impact of the pattern, the higher it is on the y-axis, and it will go down for current ones. The aspired one will go up, and of course the x-axis is the time. There's 3 horizons. I'll come to them respectively. So the dominant factor, the dominant pattern is what we see today, and ideally that needs to decrease. If we look at carbon, if you look at CO2 production, this dominant pattern needs to be reduced. And then we will have questions about that, like what are currently dominant patterns, how can we decline it, but also what need to be retained. We'll come to that when we apply it. So that's why I'm going a bit quick. I'm just going to highlight now a bit the horizons. Then switching from horizon 1 to horizon 3, it's the alternatives. So what are a bit some pockets today at a low level, but we need to see much more of it in the future. So how can we push that forward, and then how will that look like? So that's this horizon 3. And then the bit in the middle, this wavy kind of curve or a graph, is disruptive innovations. And to condense that, to summarize that, you'll have on one hand innovations that maybe retain the existing patterns, and we'll come to that when we tackle it. So hold a second. And these are H2 minuses, so new innovations that maybe will sustain the existing pattern. And then H2 plus, which are also disruptive innovations, but those will work more towards the aspired future. So that's in a nutshell what we're going to do. Sorry if I went a bit quick, but I think more insights will come by applying it. So that's what we're going to do next now. Okay, so we're still quite on time. So everything clear so far? All good? Okay, so now the intent of the next hour is we have this canvas, and because we have only an hour left, we're not going to tackle the 5 or the 8 key questions that the normal canvas can tackle, but we're going to zoom in on 5. And we're going to start with a bit aspirational items. What is the future? How will we get there? Then we will see on disruptive innovations, how can they help, or maybe can they inhibit us? And then to close off is, what of the existing patterns is maybe not so bad, and do we need to keep? Again, on the right side, we have useful links, as I did with the introduction to the System Innovation Network and the System Innovation Tools. This is going specifically to the tool, to the canvas, and I think to the guide. The guide is a bit more elaborative on what the canvas shows, but we're going into the heart of it. So again, let's talk a bit about decarbonization efforts, pathways to decarbonization. And as Marissa said, we can talk about neutrality, so offsetting it, or we can really go to net zero emissions, is to really eradicate sources of carbon dioxide production. Okay, good. So we have 5 key questions to ask. And so let's go to question number 1. I'll invite everybody to me. I'm going to set a timer also of 12 minutes. So, okay, 12. So the first question is, because that's always a bit best thing to do, is rather than starting with the current, which maybe brings us a bit in a limited mindset, in a constrained mindset, is really what with H3, the third horizon, what is the future we want to be realized? And what does it look like or feel like to live in that world? So a bit very aspirational, shooting for the stars. Let's fill in individually for 3 minutes with Post-its, question number 1. And then we'll debrief, talk about it for 6-7 minutes, and then we move on to the next one, and we do that 5 times. Okay, sounds like a plan. I see already Joanny going at it, so please go ahead.
Sorry, do you want to do 3 minutes on the timer and then do another 3 or 4 minutes, and then do you want to break it down for the time that we have for the Post-its, and then the time we have
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can do. Yeah, I was going for the overall and pause it, but we can do.
Oh, okay. It's up
3
to you,
minutes.
as long as you can keep
Yeah.
track.
Yeah, I keep track. Okay. Let's keep track together then. So all clear, so everybody's here on question number 1. I don't want to push you too much on the Myro board. So just take a Post-it. And we'll first go with Horizon 3. So that Horizon 3 is the aspirations of the future. And we're going immediately to the far right side. So I'll zoom out a bit. It's more at the top. So that means that the impact of this pattern is very high. So this is really reaching the future, the ideal state. So make sure you click next to your, if you filled in a Post-it, make sure you click next to it so it becomes also visible for other people, because I see some of your Post-its, you still have your, it's a bit in a pending mode. So make sure you click somewhere else that the Post-it becomes really live. Which I forgot to mention as well, like typically it's one idea per Post-it. Don't try to put an entire life story on a Post-it. It also helps a bit the usability. All right, time's up for the adding of Post-its and ideas. A lot I see here, so that's great. Anybody wants to maybe share what they have put there? I see this one, like carbon capture, usage and storage is a common function of society and widely understood. So to be very honest, I had to look up CCUS right before I had this session. So that's why in the beginning, I also missed again this abbreviation. So can maybe the person that had put this in there give a bit of perspective on this, of CCUS and why that needs to be a common function in this Horizon 3?
I would just say we should be looking. That's how it would be.
So this is Mark here. Hi.
Hey, Mark.
Can you hear me all right? I'm not on a very good microphone.
But we hear you very well. We hear you very well, Mark.
Okay, good. I hope it stays that way. So I was the one who put that in there. And one of the aspects of the aspirational future is for us as a society globally to understand firstly, what the abbreviation means, what that actually means, in that there is an ability for us to be able to capture carbon molecules in whatever form that could potentially be emitted into the atmosphere, reuse it, for example, in the creation of blue or green hydrogen as a powering fuel source, or to store it long term in rocks or organic materials like trees. So the different path, firstly, at that simple level, I don't believe at the moment that we even understand that as a society. Some of us do, but it's not a common thing, and it's not seen as an obligation on us. For example, when we do something to, I don't know, maybe plant a tree, if it becomes more common, perhaps it then becomes natural and would lead to an ideal future. I probably said enough.
Yeah, no, great. I think awareness is key. I think maybe some fragments of CCOS we understand, but not the whole potential behind it. Then I'm speaking a bit personally as well. So thanks for highlighting that, Mark. Maybe somebody else with something completely different, maybe a bit more social oriented, who likes to share? Maybe the sharing economy. So if the person on the sharing economy, resilient communities, maybe if we can elaborate on that. The person that that put Joss, did you say that?
I haven't put it up, but maybe if you talk about on the more social side, maybe if we understood the set of incentives that people are really under around using energy and when they use too much, and we're able to kind of design that more effectively so that we were properly incentivized to conserve energy and reuse it and use the appropriate energy. I don't think we probably don't really understand that, but if we did, we could design a much more effective system harnessing kind of behavioral features and psychology and so forth for us to conserve energy and use it effectively.
Nice, indeed, because CCOS is a bit a consequence and how to capture and deal with it, but your point is more on the front end is how to potentially avoid that also with our behaviors. Okay, thanks. Good. So looking for the interest of time, I know a lot of people put a lot of input here, so thanks for doing that. But we're going to move on. So we're keeping our eyes on horizon 3. So we go to the second question, which is a bit in the middle. And in the middle, because horizon 3 needs to grow. So this initial question, which is black at the bottom, is what are some pockets of the future you see today? So what are some minor things, some people, the early innovators, the people on the front line, what do you see happening? But we're going to skip that question in sake of time, but we're going to go to the middle one here. And in order to get to that H3 future, where Mark was sharing about and Joss, is a bit in the intermediate phase, which is a transition phase, is what in the present leads to that future, and where are the seedlings? What history, values, and culture are embedded within them? So in order to go to this new future, what is already present in today that can lead to that future? And you can also integrate stuff like history, values, beliefs, the culture, certain identities. So I'll give you again 3 minutes to do that, just as before, and then we'll do a debrief again. Here we go, 3 minutes. So next to values, we can also think about what are some movements already toward that direction. I see a fossil fuel treaty, things like that, which is already, what are already some movements. Thanks as well for sharing some links. So like to the Venus project, the treaty. And again, make sure to click next to your Post-it. So you share it for everybody, it becomes fully active or fully present. All right. Cool. Thanks again for all the great input. I see empathy, responsible consumption, behavior. We're doing research, digital transformation. Yeah, the one that spoke to me like indigenous wisdom. So can anybody maybe elaborate on indigenous wisdoms? And how you see that as a seedling for the future? Ah, okay, Anna. Yeah.
It was me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that actually once upon a time people observed and learned from nature how it works, the ecosystems, how everybody, all animals and plants, how to coexist and how tap into the potential of those different groups without destroying each other.
Oh, we're a bit losing you, Anna. I think you're frozen. But no, I think it makes sense. Indigenous wisdoms, a bit, connecting back to the earth makes a lot of sense. The Venus project is also one that a bit sparked my curiosity. Can maybe somebody elaborate on it for a minute?
I suspect that was Anna, actually.
Sorry?
But I could be wrong. I suspect that was Anna, but I could be
Anna
wrong.
again? Okay. Maybe you pick one, Marissa, because I always pick the ones from Anna. Fossil fuel treaty. That's another one. If some... Sorry?
I think that's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
I put it on there. I think there would be it's initiative already that suggests that countries commit to lowering or stopping at a certain point all their fossil fuels, just like the nuclear power treaty, and where the more rich country take a leading role and are and can enforce this to each other, because no single country will take the first step in stop making use of fossil fuels, but if they commit each other to it, it will make it easier.
Nice. Thanks, Lisbeth, for sharing. Regenerative capitalism. Anyone who wants to share that one?
That was also mine.
Oh, you're also okay.
I put in a link. It's quite an interesting concept to have a look at.
Cool.
It takes the good points from capitalism, but leaves out the bad points. And it has a lot of layers underneath it, like circular economy, also indigenous wisdoms. It gives a whole different way of looking at society as a whole.
Super. Thanks again, Lisbeth. So maybe I pick a third one from you now. So maybe I stop picking. Somebody wants to share that they feel like which could be a good seedling for the future.
I'm interested in the one that create a market for trade in liquid CO2 as a buying, is as common as buying, does it say, sorry, CO2 that is as common as buying fuel for barbecues. Since we're talking about energy systems today, right? I mean, I think we should try and tie it back to that. Can somebody who wrote that share more?
So that's me again, Mark. Hi.
Mark.
So this is all about making sure that I suppose it's the carbon utilization market is actually more prominent in people's minds. It becomes as a normal part of energy transfer, because at the moment there is a worldwide shipping market for liquid CO2 that is part of a CCUS, carbon capture, utilization, and storage activity, but it's not a very big market. Now you can imagine that if we were in the position to capture more CO2 through human activities rather than natural activities like growing trees, we'd need to incentivize people to do that. Well, how do you incentivize people? Give them the means to make money. And so if you create this market and take it away from the really big infrastructure level and make it as common as buying fuel from from a hardware store for your backyard barbecue, you'll actually be opening up the door to allowing small and medium enterprises to participate in this activity. This will, of course, need technological innovation and advances to help lower the costs, but creating the market in the first place with the right sort of regulations in place and a journey over time would be really helpful.
Nice.
Maybe I could add, can I add something?
Yeah, sure, Josh.
Maybe even using the market that's there already, right? In terms of every action that we take, every investment, every product we buy, being able to see the effects of that so that we make our purchases, we invest our money, everybody, in the right way, right? Away from carbon. And I think of that from personal experience. I was about to buy an intercontinental flight a couple of days ago, and for the first time on Google, they showed me the CO2 emissions of that flight. It's the first time I saw that I was going to put this flight, which is about 8 hours long, is going to put like a ton of CO2 into the atmosphere. And I actually thought twice about that. I looked at the price, and normally I just look at the price because that's the only information you get. But now I got the CO2, and I was thinking, well, I'm going to pay that price, and I'm going to be putting all that CO2. Do I really want to take this flight? And actually made me consider. So you could do that with every product, right? And then that's kind of harnessing the whole market.
Nice. Oh, great. I think it's very nice seedlings for the future is to really boost the public's awareness on this. Yeah. I think we all now look at food ingredients and seeing how much carbohydrates and proteins and fats sometimes are in our food, but we don't do it, I think, in this kind of CO2 context. Okay. All right, that was number 2. So that was horizon number 3. So going from pockets of the future at the low end in the current, increasing in the transition period where we now dwelled a bit upon, and then going to a high impact in the future. So what are some elements that can help in this journey from low to high impact, low to high emergence of a certain pattern, of a new pattern? This can be helped with Horizon 2, which are disruptive innovation. This is a bit a wavy thing. It can go up and down. And up are the pluses, as I said before, the ones that can help. And the minuses are the ones that maybe inhibit us or block us or delay us. I'm going to pass the word now to Marissa, if I'm not mistaken, to take us through, no, was it Anna, number 3? No, still me. Sorry.
Take over.
I'm too soon. Yeah, it's still me. Sorry for that. So I'll take the 3rd question as well. So we go to H2+. So it's not the new future that's coming. It's a bit a support horizon, let's say. And Horizon 2 pluses are new innovations that go towards building the emergence of new kinds of organizations or new kinds of ways of doing things or approaching things, or a new way of energy consumption. So what may this look like in your context? So we're talking about, again, the pathway or efforts on decarbonization on a country level, maybe on a global level, but could be on a communal level as well. So don't be restricted by all of that. So what are some of the disruptive innovations? And I think we already touched a couple. What are some of the H2 pluses that you see? So new innovations that helps creating the new future. I'll give you again 3 minutes, and then you can fill in this field. I'll bring everybody to me. 3 minutes with some up-tempo funk. That an innovation can be a certain product or a certain way of doing things, a new process. So what are some disruptive innovations which are built already or being built that could help this emergence? All right, thanks a lot. Yeah, anybody wants to share theirs? So feel free to unmute yourself.
Anika, will you get it?
Can I ask somebody to explain the seeds crypto?
Yes, that's me again. It's a new type of crypto where you can pay each other in that currency, looking at how regenerative a project or initiative is. So how much you value it in that respect.
Nice. Okay.
And how, sorry, and how does that connect back to, in a way, the kind of transition that we're talking about, do you think?
Because you look at what regenerates, so what uses less energy, or what uses renewable energy, or is even carbon negative, so that you get more seeds for those type of projects.
Okay, great.
Besides some other aspects to it, but that's the carbon or the energy aspect of it.
Okay, thanks for explaining that.
Somebody wants to build on this. I see some IoT. I see some blockchain related other Postits. Anybody wants to build on this? I see digital innovation, digital technologies.
Do you mean the one that says blockchain and IoT to start to better assess, track, exchange CO2, for example?
Yeah, that was me. So IXO is an interesting project for it's all kind of impacts actually, but you can do CO2. You can well, you got to have IoT to kind of capture the data, and then you put it on a blockchain, and you can kind of assess the impacts. You know, what you did it sequester? You know, did you plant 100 trees, which sequestered CO2, and how much? And then people can start funding that. Or did you chop down 100 trees and the opposite, right? So there you kind of start to incentivize people, right, in new ways.
Okay. Cool. The long range transfer, sorry.
No, go ahead.
The long range energy transfer, Emerald. Maybe that's you, Lisbeth, I don't know, or somebody else who wrote about Emerald and the long range energy. Nobody? The one I also had a bit of curiosity for is decentralization of the energy system. How that would help as a disruptive innovation.
That's me.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I think it also kind of relates to, I think Marissa wrote it, consumers, energy producers. So decentralizing, giving power to individuals, essentially. I mean, most of us, if you can put, you know, even solar panels, any household will produce much more than it can use. So there's a lot of kind of sense in allowing people to trade, for example, this excess energy. There could be the whole market created around that. Plus, I think it will really make the energy system more resilient because it's decentralized and it's more flexible. So I think, yeah, incentivizing people actually to go to the renewables, right? So
yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Can I pose a question to the group? I'd like to know what people think are meaningful incentives for people to do this. Like, why would people want to have this kind of energy system where it's decentralized? Or why wouldn't they even?
So this is Mark here. I'll go with one. I know the description was actually sounded like almost domestic users, but if you lift this up and think about the way we have many distributed industrial sites or clusters around any country, there are often thousands of these dotted around randomly, and not necessarily in the most obvious places, because they could be business parks, for example. If you were to disconnect them from the national grid of that country, having the ability to be resilient would be an important pathway for some types of industries, especially medicines or time critical, temperature critical developments. The types of power sources, fuel sources that can lead to this decentralization for industrial sites would be hydrogen-powered systems, because hydrogen can actually be created locally. Why is this? Why would people be interested or incentivized to move to this? Aside from the resilience question, which is always a thing for industry to consider, you can probably put in financial incentives in terms of tax rebates, and it removes the need for you to move the huge amounts of industrial oil from around from a central warehouse, national warehouse, let's call it, to those industrial hubs. That therefore leads to a national security risk removal. So there's an incentive for a nation or a government to actually consider doing something like this.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, thank you. So I see Johanny has a hand up. Maybe just take that one and then we can move on after that.
Yes, sure. So thank you. So I can imagine that people can feel a higher sense of control if they can have their own energy systems, although I do not support this idea, but I believe maybe technology could advance at the level that this is possible. And from the side of governments, I think this can help to kind of increase awareness in people. Because if you are responsible for your own energy, you need to kind of, I'm sure there will be automated processes that can show you how your system is going and for how long you're going to have energy and so on, and how you're using it, and also the kind of emissions that you're generating. So I think it's interesting. It would be useful to explore that.
Just one last question. Why do you not support that system?
Okay. So I think, well, it's not that I am socialist. I think I'm more like central, politically speaking, and liberal. But I think if we have centralized systems, we can make them cheaper. We can also try to use governmental instruments to include fairness in them and make possible that everybody's having a fair amount of energy and also is paying a fair amount. So it's just around that. I think it's more efficient.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for sharing. No, I'm just curious. Sorry, just opening the session. All right. Thanks.
No problem.
Cool.
No worries, no worries. I think we can move to question number 4. So we now talked about H2 plus, so things that can help us, but you also have H2 minus, and Anna is going to take us through that one.
Yes, now it's me. Thank you. So, you know how, everybody talking about innovation, and innovation is happening everywhere, literally wherever you look. But some innovation is really disruptive, while other innovation is meant to improve the current system, whether it's through efficiency or making it better in a number of different ways. So there's the question then for everybody to think about: what does this look like in the context of the system you're dealing with? So that would be our H2 minus. It is an innovation, but it is innovation to improve the current system.
Okay.
Can you please set up the timer, Wesley? Another 3 minutes.
Yeah, 3 minutes. Here we go.
Thanks.
Oh, sorry.
looks like time is up. Thanks. There's some really interesting points that people posted. So I really like the COP26, 27, 28. If there's someone who can share a little bit about that, what they mean.
Well, that was me.
Oh, just.
Yeah, I didn't want to admit it, but yeah, I mean, I think it's the kind of wrong approach, really. Like, get nation states together and people who have a lot of kind of incentives not to make change, right? And really, I think it would be like a lot more, as I've said, like how do you kind of incentivize, you know, all of us, larger networks through information and through different kinds of incentives, rather than kind of focusing everything on existing institutions that have a lot of vested interest in, you know, established ways of doing things, and then they get together and they make all sorts of promises. But I think we saw about Brazil, right? They came to that COP knowing about, I don't know if you saw that, so that deforestation is kind of accelerating in the Amazon and all the problems that creates. And at the same time, they came to the COP and made all sorts of statements about how they were going to kind of decarbonize. So it's like the incentives and the whole structure is kind of perverse, and it's kind of the wrong structures, I would say. And the problem is that we spend so much time focusing on that, right? We get sucked into focusing on that when maybe we should be focusing on other things. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Joss. There's a number of really interesting ones, but I actually would like to go with something again, social. And someone posted about social housing innovations that use traditional building materials to create housing stock. It'll be interesting to hear whoever put this, if they can elaborate.
Yes, hi, that was me. Sorry, I've had a very unstable internet connection, so apologies if video and audio is not coming through. So I'm calling in from New Zealand. The housing industry here is very much dominated by some monopoly construction industries. Still, yeah, relying on imports of some pretty environmentally unfriendly, energy inefficient materials. A lot of little disruptives are trying to sort of break that stronghold of the construction industry. And there's a lot of pressure on government, central government and local government here to increase the housing stock. A lot of old housing is, you know, not livable now for a lot of the communities who, you know, who can't afford. The surge in house prices is just taking off at a crazy rate in New Zealand. So the housing stock can't keep pace with the need, but in order for to try and meet that demand, we're investing more in traditional buildings. Yet there are some incredible innovations in companies trying to really make cheaper, faster, more energy efficient buildings that they actually reuse, you know, waste materials, local resources, yeah, everything from rubbers, plastics, volcanic ash that can be repurposed into cement and things like that. But yeah, the innovation's not keeping pace with the growth and demand for the housing stock. So we're just seeing more and more and more houses of the wrong kind of you know, appearing. So I guess it's that whole thing around you know, the pace of innovation at scale can't actually meet the demand. So it's kind of a real dilemma in terms of social housing requirements.
Yeah, well, that sounds like it. I'm actually curious. I know it's not exactly within this question, but given what you just shared, what do you think, or where do you see interventions can be useful to help those innovations that are within the, like, Horizon 3 sounds like it, can be scaled up and actually yeah, make a difference for systems shift? Yeah,
I guess where I'm seeing it is I'm seeing a number of some real innovative companies who the whole waste to value opportunity I think is incredible. How to start to repurpose materials in the construction industry. We're seeing it in a number of examples now, whether it's, you know, like I was mentioning before, cement, taking byproducts from industries that are still producing quite toxic waste products, but actually repurposing those quickly into actual useful inputs into other industries. So that whole waste to value circular approach. It's like in a small country like New Zealand, we're seeing some incredible innovations, but the challenge is how to prove the technology works and actually make it work at scale. And I think that's where the opportunity is to quickly productionize some of these new and emerging technologies, but actually, how do you actually produce things at scale? Like you're seeing incredible examples of one-off buildings, one-off projects, one-off production plants that can, convert CO2 into biofuels and all this sort of thing, but not at scale. So I think the challenge for construction and energy is how to really focus on some of that groundbreaking technology, but really make it work at scale, so that it can actually start to make a difference in local economies. I think at the moment that's the big challenge, is how to scale some of this technology and really make it effective and really make an impact.
Thank you for sharing this. And then I took you a little bit off the tangent here. Okay, maybe do we have time for one more question?
Yeah, we've got about a minute left on this one.
Oh, 1 minute. Okay. Is there anyone who want to just jump in and share something that off the top of their head, or whatever they posted here, or in
Who wrote geoengineering?
Yeah, that would be me. Yeah, I think geoengineering sort of relies too heavily on technical solutions, and can also be used as an excuse. We can keep on growing, we can keep on emitting because we'll engineer our way out of it. And I think it's a bit of a tricky development because we also cannot see all the other impacts that it might have.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. Okay, great. Sorry. Yeah, I'm trying not to choose. I don't know who's writing them, so just think it isn't a kind of a setup for everyone.
Okay.
I think the orange Post-its are coming mainly from these bits. Let's think about colors. I don't know.
Okay, Marissa, it's you, I think, right?
The final one.
Oops, okay. So yeah, so given all that we've kind of talked about and all the thanks, Josh, and all the sort of things we're thinking about that we're looking to in the future, I guess one thing we have to think about is kind of like the present, and the question is, how fast is the current pattern kind of again declining, and what aspects of it might we want to see retained? And I think if we just think about some things as we answer this kind of question, I think even Josh mentioned, I mean, knowing that there were more people from under the fossil fuel industry at COP26 and kind of the indigenous people combined, the kind of, but is that a significant, is that part of the current pattern? Is it declining? And, what happens if it does decline fast, or what do we want to retain? Would we all be ready to give up our computers, our internet, our plane journeys, if certain things were not still here, or if declined very quickly, if we didn't have the right technology in place? And I think the other thing to think about is, for every piece of technology we create and make and produce, they're all pretty carbon intensive in that. So just some kind of contradictory ideas there to think about. So if we can just spend the next 2 or 3 minutes thinking about what the current pattern is, how fast it's declining, and what aspects of it we want to see retained, then we can have a discussion after that. Thanks. If you can set the timer.
It's a hard one, I think.
Yeah, the cost of change versus the cost of same. Yeah?
Yeah, and I guess we still indeed need a lot of things, right? Like the system is one system is dying before the new one is being, sufficiently robust, becoming sufficiently robust to support the needs of 8 billion people.
And we're also now 70 minutes in the exercise, so thanks everybody for sticking around and keep adding stuff and being collaborative. So thanks for that as well.
Great, thanks everyone. Just to say, we've got about 15 minutes left of the session. Before we do end though, we'll go through this section. Before we do end, we'd really also like to get some feedback and discussion a little bit about this particular canvas and how it was and what we could kind of do better, what you liked and things like that. So we'll do that after this next section, but just if you can stay and feedback and have part of a short discussion, that would be really good. So the kind of question we're answering is, how fast is the current pattern declining and what aspects of it might we want to see retained? So I can see a few. So does that mean I can't choose green because that's Joss? That doesn't leave us much choice. Somebody who wrote, make sure everyone keeps access to energy and it's fairly distributed. Can someone who, don't say Elizabeth again.
It is me.
Okay, how about keep the, sorry, I'm gonna shut it down quickly. Keep the world connected by transportation and communication.
Also me.
Oh, okay. Okay, access to food, soil productivity is declining.
That's me, I'm afraid.
Oh, okay.
I think this was really a hard one to think about, because a lot of the systems which support our well-being on all levels are still dependent on unsustainable carbon-intensive activities, right? Whether it's within food or energy or transportation. So it's I think I'm not sure, just maybe to say that there's a lot of interesting new kind of approaches and ideas are coming up, and many in agriculture are showing that regenerative agricultural practices actually are working and can feed large populations. So there's hope.
Sorry, so is that in kind of response to using energy for agriculture, or just in general in terms of our
not just energy, but the non-sustainable agricultural practice. I mean, we're talking about decarbonisation, so the degradation of soils, whether it's practices of how we work soil, and then application of fertilizers and other chemicals, all of the industrial kind of systems, including, of course, the use of energy, carbon-intensive energy, all of that. I mean, if we take example of Poland, there's a good percentage of decarbonization can come from reinventing, right? Really innovating in agriculture, and it's true for many other countries. So that's where I was coming from.
Okay, thanks, great. And I hope this isn't Joss. I'd like to ask you if she's like trying to rebuild an aeroplane while you're flying along in it. Who wrote that? I don't know if it was Joss.
I wrote that, yep.
Can you share a bit about that just briefly?
Yeah, well, it's actually a really important part of systems change, the fact that you're dependent upon the old system. And I think the analogy of the airplane is very good. It makes you realize that you're actually critically dependent upon it. If the energy system we know shut down tomorrow, like, life would basically end. There would be no internet, there would be no electricity, we would be freezing cold, there'd be no food and so forth. So I think that analogy really captures that, how critically dependent, and the fact that you have to repurpose it at the same time as being dependent upon it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Thanks. I think. I think for all the change we want, none of us are really ready for a planet that's uninhabitable due to kind of lack of warming in some ways, but also lack of energy to keep everything else going that we're dependent on. So. Yeah. Okay. I'm not going to ask about the orange ones because I wrote all of those. I just like to add that I think, thinking about what came out of COP and what we hear is that, there are obviously lots of nations that aren't at the kind of quality of life that many in the global north have. And, most of the energy and kind of carbon and emissions have been kind of used by the more developed nations, whereas the developing nations are still very much struggling to kind of get electric on a consistent or even electricity at all, which isn't very fair for everyone to expect those nations to stop their progress whilst other nations have already had time to build their infrastructures and things. So that was kind of where my Postits came from. I think we've come to time on this particular kind of question. So Wesley, I'll hand back to you so we can kind of close off the session and get feedback.
Cool. Thanks everybody for all the input. Was very insightful. So personally also learned a lot. Thanks also for sticking around because 60 minutes, as you see, it's not enough to go through a canvas. 90 minutes already pushing it because as you see visually, we skipped 3 of the 8 parts of the canvas. But again, to quickly wrap it, so the 3 horizons canvas is to track a bit innovations if you go from left to right in time. And on the y-axis is the impact of the pattern. And H1 is always the business as usual. And typically it should go down because you need to bring in H3, which is an aspirational future. And then H2 is a bit in the middle. It's a supportive 8, or it can be an inhibitor as well. So thanks for filling that all in. One question we have, or actually 2 questions, and maybe we're pushing it a bit because you all did a great job, is because such tools as the 3 horizon canvas, it's good to put everything in perspective, to look at relationships, to look at the whole. But as you might see, sometimes it's not very action oriented. So maybe a thought from us was, what's next? Maybe if you can put, let's say in 2 minutes, maybe some action steps you have for yourself personally, or something in a community system or in ecosystem level that could happen post this session. So I'll give it, let's say 1 minute more to see what's next. Maybe some actions you can take from this, or you can bring back to a wider community.
Maybe I can add to this.
Sure.
Actually, we get this question all the time, and Net asked it here as well. It's a useful tool for the collective intelligence, and whether or not we're going to process and then publish something. And what we've learned through all of these different sessions that it's definitely not enough to really get something meaningful as an output from this. And there's no particular problem statement or well kind of structured and focused challenge that we're working towards. And so that's why we invite essentially all of you, any of you, to try it out in your own context, and perhaps if you're open to it, share back what came out of it and then what worked and what didn't. I mean, we are all learning community, so it will be great for everybody to then see if you get some, you know, feedback from your own experience. Please share back.
Thanks, Anna. So I see on a personal level, taking less long-haul flights, using the tool to look at my future of mobility with some students, very useful tool, so super. Thanks for putting that. Myself also, I thought the remarks of Mark, who had to go a bit earlier, but the CCUS, I think for me is interesting. We need to bring more community awareness around that. And I think with the story of Jos, with the CO2 impact of his flight, I think we need to have more of these aspects in there. Anybody else wants to share a thing, maybe an action step that I have not shared yet? Joanna or Dean, any thoughts from your side? Johanny, sorry, not Johanna.
Yes. So I wrote to continue exploring, sharing, and discussing. I think this is something we would all share. And yeah, so this is a dynamic and fluid process. So I appreciate your commitment with this event. Thanks a lot for organizing it. Thanks,
Johanny. I see Dean also coming with a video.
Hi, yes, it's just been quite inspiring. I'm aware of in New Zealand, there are a number of kind of sector-led, industry-based transformation programs where government and the ecosystem is trying to collaborate on some really forward-looking plans. I would love to find out to what degree they're exploring some of the futures and scenario tools such as this in some of those planning. So I'm lucky enough, I work with some colleagues who are involved in those industry transformation programs. So I'm going to reach out to them and just actually make them aware of the framework and just learn a little bit more about how some of this might actually be being used or not. And if not, look, we'll see what we can trigger.
Great, super. Very inspirational, Dean. And yeah, as said, we have some links next to the canvases and next to the community.
Yes.
So
awesome.
Feel free to reach out and to us, and also to Jos, who's on the line, who's actually, I think, founder of the network. So happy to help. All right, thanks. I think the final one is a bit our traditional type of retrospective tool, a bit on the session itself, also on the canvas you've seen. So this is the orientation of the final question we have for you. And it's a bit divided in 4 parts. So about today's session, what did you like? You can put Post-its in the top left corner. Some things you learned, some things you want to put into practice. I think it's already a bit the previous question. But we wanted to give that a bit of special attention. So feel free not to maybe put into practice, put input there. And then I think also important, something you longed for, maybe you missed something, or maybe that took too long or was not enough present today. So feel free to do the retrospective of today. I'll give you maybe 2 minutes, and that will be the end of the session, and then we will close it. So thanks for that.
Can I just add something as well? Well,
yes, Marissa.
I think it'd be really interesting if anybody's got ideas around topics that they want to use. Then we have a number of tools, and we're building sessions all the time just for us to learn, to experiment together. So whilst we won't be doing commercial work for people at this point, unless you have a project, if you have a topic that you want to kind of bring forward to the community and we can kind of build something around it together, then I think that would be really interesting as well, just because we want it to be as kind of participatory and collaborative as possible.
Super. Thanks for the call out. Yeah, I was muting the music. I thought I muted it for everybody, but I only muted for myself. So that I again learned something. The
music's muted for me as well.
Yeah, because when you were talking, I heard it on the background. So okay, all right. I'll give people 1 minute more.
No music.
Now you hear music, yeah? Yeah, or yeah. Next time
Oh,
another.
no. I'm afraid someone doesn't like hearing music.
No? Okay. Sorry for that. No music. Oh yeah, sorry, Joss. Sorry. I'll give you the last 30 seconds of no music then. Okay. Maybe another team would have been better. That's for next time then. You can put it in the lump for Joss.
He likes music. Does that mean he doesn't? Oh.
He just offered to sing. Joss offered to sing.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I have some. Yeah, we have Cosmic Vibe. We have Sunshine Jam, Smooth Grooves.
He must have just kissed the Blarney Stone and he's willing to sing for us.
Okay. Thanks, Anne, for the input on the chat. So some technical issues. Sorry to hear that. Okay, what aspects should not be expressed in terms of products? In terms of function, yes. Okay. Yeah, very, I think, very valuable build. Not only just products as is, but also services. Yeah, and you hear my kids on the background, maybe. Okay, thank you, Anne.
The current system that you want to keep.
Yeah, yes, that's my system. I'm part of many systems, so.
Yeah, definitely agree. And I think you're just trying to give people some food for thought. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're limited to a product or a service or a physical thing, right? It could be anything, structures, social structures and everything. So yeah, thanks for that.
Just my experience that if you say aspects, people automatically, it's like think of things, and not only like I want to have a house rather than I want to have a place to live, and that's why we want to own houses, we want to buy things, we want to have purchasing power, because we think of owning things that can then fulfill our needs rather than immediately having a community around you that fulfills your needs, or a spiritual life that reduces your needs, or whatever it is. So and I feel that you have to sort of like almost overstress that social and spiritual side to compensate for the downloading of technical things, technical solutions, so-called, which are in the long run are a problem. I mean, blockchain, where if you look at some community currencies, to be more energy efficient, if you look at the energy consumption of the blockchain itself, it might be even negative. So that's why thinking in terms of functions, or well-being, community organization, access to services rather than things, it's usually necessary to add that layer a little bit.
Okay, thank you. And thanks everybody for the retro. So I know we're closing, but also thanks for the feedback on the long for. I think it speaks also to Marissa's points. Yeah, if you have topics, feel free to share them, then we can orient sessions around that. And also I think here part one is the big picture. Is this a one-off? Yeah, this is a bit of a one-off, but we also do things in a lengthier scope, that we have a team where we dedicate 3 sessions around. But I think it's a fair push. Nobody wants to do a lot of one-offs, because then the impact is less. A bit more examples, yes. Okay, do this again for sure, with or without music. We'll have to check with Jos. I'm just joking. Okay, cool. Respecting of everybody's time. Thanks a lot for joining us. I hope it was insightful. feel free to join our network, our group here, the Singapore SI Hub. Feel free to check out all the links we put on the Myro board. And that's it from my side. Thank you for joining. If anybody wants to add something. Yeah, Anna, go ahead.
Sorry, no, just to say, look out for the New Year initiatives. We're in discussion of some interesting collaborations, and hopefully you'll find it interesting as well. Thanks very much for joining.
And if anyone wants to join the community as like the organizing team across the network, we are, always open for more brains and kind of hands as well. So yeah, be sure to keep a lookout and hook up with us.
Thank you all.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Day,
Bye now.
and the rest of the week.
Thank you.